My guest today is Bobby Curnow. Bobby is a group editor over at IDW and has been editor for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ongoing series since issue 1. He has a trade available now called Ghost Tree. You can give him a follow over on Twitter at the Disastrix. That's at THEDISASTRIX. What's going on, guys? I'm sitting here with Bobby, and we're going to talk Turtles for a little while. Now, I'm not quite sure what your first iteration of the Turtles, from some of the interviews I've seen with you, it has been that Mirage, at least I think, but my first introduction with these Turtles was that original 90s movie. So when you hear the term Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what are some of the first emotions or thoughts that just pop up in your head when you hear that term?
That's a complicated question just since I've been living day in and day out with turtles for coming up on 10 years now. Yeah, there's still that nostalgia feeling. I'm 39 right now, so my first exposure was the original cartoon, and then as I aged out of that, then I got into the Mirage comics. Just extreme fondness for how wonderfully weird the world of turtles is. You get how weird it is just from the name, and it makes you think, what's going on here? I need to find out more about whatever this crazy sounding, toy or property or comic is. I think it's just interest and curious what's next in this crazy world.
Do you think you have more of an affection for these turtles now that you're seeing them? I don't want to say third party, but you're seeing them through your eyes, but also somebody else's eyes. Do you see them differently than you might have seen them, 10 years ago?
Well, yeah, definitely. I do definitely feel like I have a deeper understanding of the characters, having helped develop them in the comics, and yeah, I think you get older and you have new perspectives on things. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, cool, they're fighting, they're ninjas, they look weird, they're mutants. Whereas now, the family aspect and the character aspect and the relative youth and how they're growing up, all those elements are much more interesting to me now that I'm older and have a bit more perspective on both life and the property.
Now, did you start out? So you said you started out with the cartoons, and then later evolved into the Mirage, and then so on. And there's, what was your favorite turtle then? And then why did you like it? And is that still, I know you've said before you don't really have a favorite turtle, or you kind of like them all, I don't want to say equally, but, you see the cohesiveness in them. So it's hard to kind of pick out. And I see most of the writers and artists, they have that same, that same notion. It's so hard to pick. It's like picking your favorite child. But do you still follow that same like kid-like manner that you had? That, oh man, like mine was always Raphael. But what was yours? And then do you still have that same affinity for him?
Yeah, I'm a Leo guy, definitely. When I was a kid, I think it's like color blue, and I was like, oh, he's got long swords. That's cool. You can, you got two of them. You can chop up enemies quicker and faster. And I think that still kind of holds true. My affinity for Leonardo. I always like, characters that feel compelled to keep everything together and do the right thing. Maybe it's the editor in me.
That Boy Scout.
Organize chaos around me, yeah. So I'm still a Leo guy, I'd say at heart. But what you said is absolutely true. They're a foursome, they're a family, they're a dynamic, and all those flavors taste better together, definitely.
Yeah, because like I said, I've always had that, I guess, that connection with Raphael. Just, I don't want to say I'm an angry guy, but it's like I can understand like why, he would be heated for, whatever issue, Leo taking too much of a stance or being too much of that Boy Scout. Not really, especially in this, you see, I don't want to say spoiler, alert for, issue 100, but some crazy shit happens in issue 100. And I gotta say, I don't know about you, but that last couple pages hit me so hard. Like my eyes started watering. You just see. I mean, do you think it's safe to say what happens, or should we make people go out and buy this issue 100?
It's been about a year now, so I'd say go for it. Yeah,
You
right.
know,
I'm
so,
cool with it.
I mean, Splinter died, and I don't know about you, but like whenever I read comics, right, there's always this specific voice for each character. You know, for the Turtles, it just happens to be, you know, that original cast. If I'm reading Batman, it's Kevin Conroy's Batman. Joker, Mark Hamill's Joker. You know, so seeing, you know, that character act that way, and then it just completely decimated the family. I mean, what was the thought, or like what was like? Was it silent? Was it like, you know, like it was a funeral? But I mean, was it as somber as it was on the page inside the offices, or when you were talking to the creators?
No. When we talked to artists involved and kind of give them a heads up what the storyline they're going to be, there was some surprises, and oh no, you can't do that to Splinter, but we kind of had knew that this was going to happen. I would say in the 40s of the series.
Damn.
Because we knew we were going to kill Shredder in 50, and we were going to give the Foot Clan over to Splinter. And from there, we started thinking about the larger arc of that, how that would maybe corrupt him a little bit. But then we also wanted to, of course, redeem him and have it be a big moment, like number 50 was. We wanted to definitely, close a chapter of the Turtles' lives and also open a brand new one. So that was kind of in the back of our minds, for several years. So I think by the time we got to it, we probably were pretty comfortable with it and
Yeah.
not too emotional about it. But it was still great to see people's reactions and realize that the character touches people and we've heard things like what you said. And that's always great to know. It's something you've been working on for a few years can have that impact. I think that's the main. It's nice to be paid too, but I think that kind of a emotional response is what when comics is really looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's you see it in movies and TV shows. You know, an actor. You know, sadly, you know, we lost Chadwick Boseman last week. You know, so you see that character. It's. I think it's so much harder to convey a character's emotion or what they're thinking or what's going on really inside that head, on a piece. It's like a text message, right? You get a text message, you read it the wrong way. They didn't mean to send it that way, but you know it happens. And it's the same thing with comics. You know, I see that last page or I see those pages, and I'm like, nah, they're not gonna. Nah, this is gonna be some nightmare sequence. You know, this is gonna be some. And then I'm like, I turn the page and I'm like, oh shit, this is happening. And then, you know, I've been married for 11 years now, so, you know, I start going, oh shit, man, what? No, right? This is all this stuff, and I didn't think I was really saying this stuff out loud. And my wife rolls over. She's a real light sleeper, and she's, what's wrong? And I'm like, they killed Splinter. I'm like, you woke me up for a fictitious rat.
What is wrong with you?
So yeah, it was. There's only been like a couple like stories. I don't know if you read anything like current now or have read anything current. I know being an editor is a real busy job. You know, you got so many irons in the fire. But did you ever get a chance to read Scott Snyder's Swamp Thing run back when DC did their relaunch?
Yeah, I started it. I think who did art in that?
Unique Piquet.
How to pronounce his last.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Unique
no,
Piquet.
definitely. I think I read probably 10 or 12 issues of that. I don't think I read it all the way through. But yeah, that was good stuff.
So they had that same. This was the first time since then. So I think this is issue 20. So maybe if they did one a year and it didn't happen, they didn't skip. It would have been the 2-year mark where he was coming off the book, and then Charles Soule took over, and they had that splash page where spoiler alert, they killed Abby, right? And you're like, hold, what the hell is going on? And it was like the first time I got that look from my wife, like, jeez, why did I marry this one of all people? But going back to my original point, when you see somebody on the big screen, on a TV, even a cartoon, it'll hit you in the feels if it's on the right day, if you're in the wrong headspace, but to get that kind of, just to elicit that emotion in a reader, I just think is amazing, with pictures and words. I don't want to oversimplify it, but when it comes down to it, it's pictures and words, and you guys have done this on a consistent basis for 108 issues. We're not talking like micro series or Shredder in Hell or anything like that, the one shots that came along, for each turtle. And I really got to tip my hat to you guys. I mean, you guys, I'm not a religious guy, but you guys are really doing the Lord's work over here with these turtles, man.
Well, it's really wonderful to hear, and I really appreciate that. I think part of it, I think we did a good job, so I'm not trying to take anything away from us, but I think part of it is, being with the series for so long, and we've had the luxury of being able to go for so many issues, and you get to really develop that deeper relationship with the characters because you know them over time. And you see how they're changing and how they're reacting to things, and they become a part of your life, and so we're helped out by the format in our longevity that we're very lucky to have. But thank you. That's very nice to hear, and that's super.
Yeah, it's this year has put so much stuff into perspective, just for me, but I'm pretty sure for a lot of people.
Sure.
Like I said, with Chadwick dying last week, and then Cope. I'm a huge basketball fan. Sadly, I'm a Magic fan. We haven't done anything in a few years, but it's just I'm used to that letdown. But like there was so much that has happened this year that's just made it where I started thinking, I'm like, man, I really got to tell these people. I got to give them their roses. I got to tell them, even if it's just a glancing thank you, I appreciate it type of thing. At least I know, I got it off my chest and I could tell you guys, thank you.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you devoting your communication to putting out positivity out there. Respectful critiques are great, and that's always wonderful. But I personally never understand people who go out of their way to tell a creator that they hated something that they did or something like that. So, it's nice to hear people who want to spread some love out there and spread some positivity.
I mean,
These days, so that's great.
there's so much negativity out in this world, and I'm not always the most upbeat guy, but like when I find something that I really love, man, it's like hitting that main vein, right? It's like that. It's like, oh, man, I gotta get this. This book. And like I said, it just sounds like I'm filleting IDW and you guys so much, but I'm telling you, there's two books that it doesn't matter what else is in my pull list when I go to my local comic store. If you guys are listening in Central Florida area, this is not a paid ad, but Comic Central in Sanford, outstanding store. Now back to your regular recorded time. So it is this one and Immortal Hulk from Al Ewing on Marvel. Those two books, and then Turtles always goes over Hulk. I've just been a bigger fan of the Turtles than Hulk. But there is one thing that I've always, well, there's a few things that I've got written down here, but there's one thing for real that, I've, not that I have had a hard time understanding it, but I've always wanted to wonder, like, how it goes. So, whenever you open up that first page, it always says story by, Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz. Now, is this something they would flush out, like long term? Like Kevin and Tom would go back and forth? Or would it be something that, like, Kevin's like, hey, man, we want to do this. And then Tom gets on, and then he kind of fills in, the chapters in between one and end.
You still there, John?
Yeah, did you hear me?
Yeah, I think you cut off at the very end there.
Can you hear me?
You're asking about the writing process of the issues.
Yes, sir. Like, I'll just go ahead and say it over, and I can always edit this back out.
Sure.
But I've always been interested when it comes to, a story. And you open up that first page, and it's like story by Kevin, collaboration with Tom, or collectively they were both on the story. Did Kevin just have hey man, I want to see the Turtles, start and then end here, and then it's up to Tom to kind of fill in that thing, and then they bounce ideas off of each other, or was it a little bit more? I don't want to say complicated, but it was a little bit more like we got notes for each one or index cards for each scene, or
Yeah. So just about the 20s of the issue, it's really been the three of us. I got a story credit in there too. I don't put my name on the front just because that seems like a bit much. But what usually happens is that I'll kind of, since I'm also involved with all the side series and the mini series, I've got kind of like the bigger view of the entire franchise at the moment. So how usually we have what we call mind meld sessions. Kevin lives down here near San Diego. Obviously, Tom does too. And so we meet together, and I have a kind of like a list of where we've been recently and what it seems like we're going to. And so then the three of us will just bat ideas around. Then usually I would kind of type it all up into sort of a paragraph by paragraph, page by page breakdown of what happens in a story arc. And then Tom, then we get that approved with Nickelodeon, and then Tom will write the script. So we're all kind of in there, throwing in different ideas, and then it's Tom at the end who synthesizes it. And so I'd say we're all involved in the plot, but Tom he's all the dialogue, he's all the details, and I'd really say the heart of the series, because I think it's his dialogue and the way his approach to characters that he really makes the turtles identifiable and lovable, and adds those stakes and tension. But other than that, it's a great collaborative effort, and those mind melding sessions were tons of fun. And Kevin and Peter were my heroes growing up. And as I started getting into those Mirage comics, so being able to hang out and shoot ideas back and forth with Kevin and Tom has really been a career highlight for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that this idea came up by two dudes goofing off in what they called Mirage Studios. It's crazy that it's like I said earlier, 108 issues, and we're not counting any of the side issues, any of the micro series, and it's I don't want to say crazy again, but it's crazy that this guy Tom can take 4 different turtles, two different father figures, the one evil, so the Luke, or the Jedi and the Rebellion, the Jedi and the
Empire.
Thank you. I blanked out here. I had some points here. Not the hugest Star Wars guy, but I had some points there that I was trying to line up. It just escaped me, but I appreciate that. That's why you're a great editor, man. You're sitting there, you're watching. He's gonna get it. No, he's not. I'm gonna save him. So, but
no worries. I worked on Star Wars comics a little bit too, so I got that at the tip of my tongue.
we'll put a pin in that one, because, like I said, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but there's a few things that I really liked about the Darth Vader comic series. They've done like 4 or 5 of them now. That's just one of those franchises that I've tried to get into, and my son loves it, and it sucks because he'll ask me all these questions, and I'm usually the guy that rattles off. If my brain worked for science or math, I'd probably be a rich scientist now. But it works for food. I'm a chef by trade. It works for movie quotes, and mainly obscure movie quotes. Forrest Gump is one of those go-to ones. And then comic books, So I don't really have that hardware for Star Wars. And like when he first started getting into it, he'd hit me with a who's this, who's that, and I know some of the base characters like everybody knows, but like he was hitting me with these details, and I couldn't Google fast enough. So his first introduction to a comic book store was me going to that comic book store I mentioned earlier, and then Sam, the guy there. I would just put my son in front of him. My son's 5 or 6 at the time, and he's just rattling these things off, and then he would look over me and he'd be like, throw his shoulders up. I'm like, hey man, I'm here for shopping for comics. He's asking questions,
Yeah, well, I think everyone, all nerds have a blind spot in nerddom, so that's not unusual. I've never watched an episode of Doctor Who, and I've got friends who have been trying to get me to watch that for the early decades. So, don't feel too much shame there. We all have to focus our nerddom powers in just a couple directions to fully, power up there.
Yeah, I got you. But so what was it like seeing everything so different? I mean, was it hard for Tom to find a voice for these guys, or did you notice, because it seems like he hit his mark, unlike I did just a second ago. It seems like he hit his mark on every single issue. And for comics going this long, you very rarely will you see, in my opinion, I'm biased, but there hasn't been one sleeper issue of this entire series. There hasn't been one filler issue. Was that just him being the unicorn that he is, or is that just, consistent, practice, consistent reps with, reading the back material, getting any source material he can? Like, what was, I just don't see how he did it flawlessly every single time.
Well, I think part of it is, training those muscles, and after time, they're toned, and you can just kind of go for it. But I also think our approach, our mind melding sessions, really helped. I think we're able to help each other where we're a little bit weaker than one another. Tom, I think Tom freely admits that he's not great at fight scenes, and Kevin, who really loves martial arts and loves kung fu movies and that kind of stuff, he'll often have an idea about how to stage a scene or where it would be. I consider myself a plot guy, so a lot of the big twists are things that I kind of came up with. So I think all of that together, and like as I said with Tom, just having that great sense of the characters and their voices, I think all those things together really, help make it a smooth, consistent reading experience, because we're kind of able to help each other out when something isn't quite where it should be.
Now, when you've got the flagship Turtle book that you're editing, or you're the editor for, excuse me, is everybody coming to you to see like where the story's going? So that if they're doing a miniseries or if they're doing a one shot or something like that, do they have to run everything by you, or is that an editor to editor type of thing?
Yeah, that's all me. With everything that is produced is approved by Nickelodeon at some stage. So there's never been an instance where we did surprise issue and we had no clue what was happening. But yeah, if it was a writer on a miniseries or something, we talk about kind of what we're looking for in the series, what's going on in the series. If there's if I knew that there's some sort of specific plot point that I knew that we wanted to have be bolstered in the ongoing series, I'd walk them through that. Then there are other times, like the Dimension X miniseries we did, where it's just like the Turtles have this goal, but you do whatever you want with it. It's just kind of a chance to have fun and play around with it. Artists and writers as an editor, it's sort of my job to make sure everyone knows what they need to know and everyone's on the same page, essentially.
Now, two questions came up while you were giving the explanation, and thank you for that. Nickelodeon's come up a few times. Have there been anything that you guys really wanted to do that they just said no, or have they been just make it good?
No, I don't think so. I think there's definitely small things that I can't even really think of. There is something I think we wanted number 100 to go a little Bishop's Fate to go a little differently. They asked us to pull back on that, but very few. But the very first year, they were I would say very involved and had a good deal of notes, which is understandable. Nickelodeon paid a lot of money for the franchise, and we were the first out the gate before their cartoon came out or any of the movies, so they were very protective of it, and they wanted to make sure that. The relationship was new. IDW had not done comics with Nickelodeon before, so they were protective over it, and so there were a lot more notes then. But by the second year, they kind of got that we got it, and have been, I would say, largely pretty hands off. There's been my main contact there is a woman named Joan, and she'll have great ideas on occasion too. If she's reading a proposal, and she'll say, "Oh, but what about if this character did something?" We're like, "Oh, yeah, that's great." But even that's pretty few and far between. They're overall pretty hands off. I think that's a testament to our communication. Is that we've always been really talking to them clearly about what our plans are, and so there haven't been many surprises in terms of us doing things they weren't expecting. So it's I work on a few different licenses, and over the years, over the past decade, I've worked on dozens of them. But Nickelodeon are some of my favorite people, some of my favorite licensors. They understand comics, and they understand that what we're doing in the comics is different than what might be going on in the cartoons and in the movies, and they encourage and support that. So that's relatively rare, and we're very thankful for that.
I mean, they had some of sidebar. They had some of the best cartoons of all time. Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, and even some into the early 90s. You had some of the greatest cartoons that's I've ever seen, at least. And every generation's biased. But just seeing.
Yeah, well, they weren't afraid to get weird, you know? They weren't afraid to, they weren't afraid to be weird, and also they didn't talk down to the audience. I remember those cartoons from the early 90s, and I felt like it was just like you were transported to a different world, and it wasn't like, you were clearly just being marketed to. So, yeah, I think everyone in Nickelodeon was good people.
You could see you'd always see the two sides whenever you see a movie, right? So you see that money aspect. You're like, oh man, this movie might have been a money grab, right? And then you see that heart,
Sure.
right? And there's so many movies that don't have one or the other, or they have one or the other, And with a lot of the cartoons, and I think that's why it translates so well to the comics, is a lot of those cartoons you could see that they really wanted to it was a passion project, or it was something they were having fun with. And then when you start seeing things change and it starts getting, oh man, this is starting to get weird, and not in a good way, then you find out, years down the road that there was a lot of, bad blood. How have you guys been able to, because everybody, like creative, in the creative field, right? So what I do for a living, like I said, I'm a chef. It's a craft, but, it's art at the end of the day. Has that, and you always get people that don't take criticism very well. Has there ever been like that? And I don't want to get too personal, but I just want to know how it is managed, like at the managing level, when you have to manage like so many different creative types. What is that like? Is that difficult, or?
It can be. You kind of, over time, I would say it's more difficult for when you're starting out in a creative field when you don't really know what you're doing. You don't really know, maybe I'll say, some danger signs with people. You can tell, like, oh, this person's very egocentric, or this person is just phoning it in for the money, for the check. But that's not really an issue at all with turtles for a few different reasons. I think partly the turtles are really, in their world, are really fun to draw, and so I've never had difficulty finding artists for turtles. Everyone, a lot of artists just really enjoy the world and drawing them, and they like drawing something different and weird. And so almost everyone comes with a lot of enthusiasm to turtles, and I think it also helps that Kevin is there. Everyone kind of knows that Peter and Kevin created this, and Kevin's still very much involved, and so he's rightfully going to be kind of the center star of it. So and everyone also loves Kevin and is excited for a chance to work with them, even a little bit or tangentially. So I think a lot of where you maybe would get ego problems or communication problems. I think we're kind of lucky with Turtles that sort of a lot of people's dream project, and the people involved with it have a good reputation. So everyone's just kind of on board to make the best turtle product they can, tell the best turtle stories they can. So I've been supremely lucky. I can't really think of anyone who's, I would say, difficult to work with.
Oh yeah, you don't have to drop any names.
No, I'm not. I'm being honest. There's definitely been people who missed their deadlines, and maybe that was discouraging them from getting more work. But overall, on a personal communication, work level, everyone's been great. It's been really, I've been really lucky.
Just going back to that movie now, you could tell, in your work, you guys are having fun. It's not, like you said, phoning it in. You guys have had, I don't want to say a revolving door of artists, because it just sounds like you guys are just using one and going. But you guys have had some of these guys on here. Dan Duncan was, I don't want to say my favorite because there's so many different artists on here, and I'm loving what Sophie's doing. We got her coming on the podcast really, really soon too, and I'm so pumped because she's this turtle person, and then she's huge into monsters, and then she plays D&D, and then all this crazy stuff's going on. So I know it's going to be a fun talk, and she has been, and she said you were going to be a fun discussion too, and she didn't lie at all. So I was talking to her right before this because we were setting up that schedule, but she was telling me that when she started doing this stuff, it's same with you. It started with one thing, and then it evolved to this, and then so that all blended into her creative style. And what I've liked with this what has she been on? 8 issues so far? Not count just for this main title after Tom took it over. It's been 8, right?
Yes, yes, that's what's been out. Yeah, since we're working a few
Oh,
issues ahead, it's always
no, yeah, it's
I always
fine.
have to kind of figure out what came out. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, 108 was the last one.
Yeah, 108 just came out last Wednesday, not yesterday, but the week before last. You
Right.
know, and it seems like she's hitting her marks. And I don't ever compare a writer or an artist to a different one. I like writers for certain things. There's some writers, like you were saying, you know, that Tom might have had, you know, kind of some issues of flushing out fighting scenes, and then he had the OG, triple OG, you know, Kevin to go, hey man, you're super into the martial arts. Is there something that I'm missing here? Is there something that's not clicking, or a part of this equation is not adding up to what I need it to add up? You know, and has it been like you guys have these people by creators, the writers and artists? Do you have them like in mind for specific story arcs, or is it like, hey man, we need somebody to fill in, or how do you guys go about picking and choosing if you need somebody to fill in for a few?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. It's always a bit of half magic. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly half, but it's always part planning and part improvisation. Because it always depends on what people's schedules are. I really had to talk Sophie into doing this art because she had other stuff, she had other books that she wanted to work on.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it didn't take that much. But it did take a little bit of doing, more than I usually have to do. Because as I said, normally everyone just kind of jumps at turtles, and Sophie is a huge turtle fan. There's no question about that. One of the very biggest. But she just had other stuff going on. But you talk about different strengths as a writer, and I know Sophie is less of that big plot, big danger person, but is really wonderful with small moments and characters just living and being themselves. And we knew after issue 100 and City at War, the long storyline that came before that, that was just sort of relentless action. We knew we needed a breather,
A pick me up
both for
moment.
the reader, just to kind of for the reader, just kind of get a break from the action. Also for the turtles to deal with that, the trauma of losing their father figure. So I knew Sophie was going to be a good match for that. I also thought after 100 issues, it was a good time for a change of pace. And none of us were tired, I'd say, but we could, all of us, Kevin, Tom, and myself, I felt used a little bit of a break because we were just really it was finally catching up to us at the end there. We were just coming closer and closer and closer to our deadlines, and it wasn't going to be sustainable forever.
Yeah.
But now Kevin and Tom are working hard at the Last Ronin, which is
I can't
a
wait.
series that's going to be coming out soon. Yeah, so they're not gone from Turtles at all, and they could come back to the ongoing one day. But yeah, I felt like we all needed a little bit of a break and a change of pace. So, and I think Sophie was the exact right person to come on board. So I'm really happy that we were able to make it work.
I am too, and I hate saying this, but I'm a very honest person, very blunt person. I didn't really know about her. I was a Navy guy, so I was consistently deployed. So I actually started picking up this series probably 2014, 2015, because I was deployed so often. My wife would go and get my comics, and I'd get my little care. I get a couple care packages every month, and then she'd save my books. And then the other two would be from her and my mom, and then it'd be snacks so I could actually eat on the carrier. 5,500 people, not a lot of food, and people tend to be a little bit greedy when the good stuff comes up. So they always kept me fed, and they always make sure I was reading. So I didn't know Sophie Campbell probably until I want to say 3 years ago, and then I was looking for a specific toy when NEC had started releasing some of this stuff, through GameStop and everything else. I started, getting more into the toy purchasing, and I was just on this Facebook group, and I was like, hey, if you guys like this cover artist, what would you say, or who would you like to see that hasn't been on a turtle book? And it was, a couple days later, I looked back, and there was 20 or 30 comments, and every other one was Sophie Campbell, Sophie Campbell, Sophie Campbell. I'm like, why have I never heard of this person before? And I hate saying I've never heard of that person because it almost makes me feel like I'm diminishing them, but I'm really not. It's just I was gone for so long, and then I see her name pop up, and then I see that she's getting to write these books, and I start going back and buying all of these other things that she was doing, and I'm like, man, do they have, I don't want to say the next Tom Waltz because everybody's different, but do they have that next scribe that was supposed to be for the Turtles? You know what I mean? It went Kevin and Peter, and then, if you cut out everything in between it, it went Tom and Kevin. And then is it going to be Sophie, Tom, and Kevin now?
So it's just Sophie these days. Kevin and Tom are still reading the issues, and they have opportunity to chime in before it goes to print. But it is really just Sophie. One thing I wanted to do was to bring in some different voices, and so we're kind of doing what I'm calling a showrunner approach, where now Sophie is the showrunner, so she might not be completely writing every issue or drawing every issue, but it's her story more than anyone else's. She's kind of leading the general thrust of it, and so that's going to be going up to issue 120, I believe, and then I think we'll probably shift gears again. I think that's about all Sophie has bandwidth for. She may very well tell you that she wants to go on forever, but that's the agreed upon, kind of extent.
Like a contract.
Then, yeah, exactly. And so, but after that, what's great is that, as I said before, I've had great experiences with all the creators, and that's why you keep seeing people like Dave Wachter, like Mateus Netfloco, return to this series, is because they have a lot of love for the Turtles, and I hope I let people know that the door is always open for the future. We're lucky that we have a series with long lifespan, and so I love that people can come back, and they come back, better artists always. No one's come back a worse artist. So the book continues to be enriched by those creators who are both advancing in the Turtles world and advancing in the artist world. So yeah, we're absolutely very lucky in that regard.
Man, Mateus can draw the hell out of some turtles, man. I was blown away because it's like it used to be all about the art when I was younger, and then slowly as I've gotten older, I've really, I don't want to say I was paying attention to the words more, but it seems like they've registered more. And at this point, it used to be I could just buy, oh man, it's got my favorite artist. Cool, I can get this book. But now if that story's, not there, is it hard? Well, not hard. How is it transitioning from Tom's voice to Sophie's voice, and then whoever you guys have selected for the next voice? Are you always looking, not so much for something different, but for something, I guess something different?
It depends. I thought Sophie would be the right person for where the story was at the time that she took over, but I was very familiar with Sophie's writing, both on Turtles and her other writing, her other creator-owned books. So it depends. I'd like to think, I don't think I have very much of an editorial heavy hand, especially not these days. And so I think it's mostly just Sophie feeling comfortable in the environment, in the working environment with the Turtles. And there'll be a few times we'll be like, this doesn't quite feel right to me that this character is doing this. But that's a very few and far between. So it really hasn't been too much of an issue. I think some people like Sophie more than Tom as a writer. I think the vice versa is true, and I think that's very. We all have our favorite writers, and they just speak to us for any given reason. I think that's healthy and natural. So yeah, I don't think it hasn't been difficult for me managing that transition.
Everybody always does better when they have that I want to say adversary because that's not what it is, but like Coke and Pepsi. You had Tyson and Holyfield, Jordan, or LeBron, Kobe. Insert whatever you want here, but it's nice to have. They're not equal in the sense that they write exactly the same. They're equal because they're both putting out just such fantastic books, both artistically and with the wordsmithing that they've been doing. Has there been something as far as a secondary character that you have seen not portrayed enough in either one story, or either writer's rendition of their turtles?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. There's characters maybe I would like to see more, but that could just be a personal preference.
Who would you like to
I'm
see?
a big Baxter guy. I love to see Baxter, but he's actually getting some time now as mayor of New York. Fugitoid, I think, is cool. I'd like to see him kind of back in the series. I'd like we're starting to develop Alopex a little bit more. I'm happy about that. I'd like to see. I'd love to see Angel get more of a slash nobody get more time. April is someone who is one of my favorite characters, and again, I think we're doing pretty good with her now, working in the mayor's office at Stockman. But I'd love to get some stories that where they're more of the main characters, and I think we're long enough in the series where we can do that. Not everything has to be the turtles, but I'm hopeful that we will get to those stories eventually. So. We got such a big cast of characters, and I know there's definitely some people who feel like the turtles are taking a back seat in their own book, and I can understand that criticism at different times. But there's just so many great characters, both that were already made for us to play with, and then some characters that we've come up on our own, like Old Hob, who we're really taken with and want to develop. So that's one of the most difficult things, is juggling all those characters and not ignoring anyone. And that was definitely one of the very hardest things in City at War. And those issues 90 through 100 is we wanted to touch on everyone almost and give everyone a cool moment. I think we did that to an extent. Definitely some things were more successful than others in terms of character impact and development. There's no doubt about that. But it's also part of the fun, though, too. Is having it's a better problem to have too many great characters than not enough. So that's to our advantage, definitely.
I think if you were to cast Nick Nolte in an actual, or not Nick Nolte, I just gave you the punchline. Old Hob, I'm choosing Nick Nolte all day. Does anybody play?
He'd be a great voice. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
him or Ron Perlman. His grungy Hellboy. I mean, it's campy in today's age, but back in the day, it was, grimy type of feel. But that character. I mean, he just reminds me of like my grandpa. My grandpa was always one of those dudes that he would mess with you. He would pull practical jokes, and he I don't know how PC it is or whatever it is, but he would take a banana, and he always wore tight blue jeans, and then he would chase my grandma around the house with the banana, coming through his zipper and stuff. And I always felt like Old Hob. He has this tough demeanor, this gruff about him, but he almost makes me feel like he's kind of like Raph, where if you start, like Shrek, you start peeling back those layers of that onion, you might find something that
definitely.
smells or might be harsh. It might be a little soft. Do you see that for that character?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was during the City War arc. It was really fun to play them, close to each other, because I think absolutely they are very similar. And I think I didn't realize this until my 30s. When I don't like someone in my personal life, which is isn't often, but someone kind of rubs you the wrong way, it's usually like later on I'll realize, oh, what I don't like about them is something I don't like about myself that I haven't fully,
Dealt with.
processed or dealt with. Exactly. You see something that you recognize. So I think they have a lot of conflict with each other because they are similar. So sometimes, opposites attract. I guess similars can repulse.
Yeah.
A way of that phrase needs some work in the wording, but hopefully
Opposites repel, or
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Definitely, and I think if Raph never did get reunited with his family. I think it's very easy. I think now that I'm speaking out loud about it, I think it's very, easy to see had Hobb stayed with his human family that we saw in his micro-series issue way back, maybe he'd be a much chiller, cooler guy. And maybe Raph would be more of a villain if he never was reunited with his family, if he didn't have that support group. So that's definitely what Hobb is up doing. Hobb has just been trying to kind of create his own family with mutanimals and trying to regain some sense of security and companionship. I think that's a great observation, and it definitely wasn't intentional. It wasn't something we planned, but definitely something we recognized as time went on and started playing into a little bit.
Now, you spoke earlier. I want to talk a secondary character. I don't ever like calling it a secondary character because it always, like I said, it just sounds like we're pushing them in the background or they don't mean much as a main character.
I know what you have. Yeah.
But when supporting, that sounds so much better. That's like calling that's like calling a waiter now or a server a waiter. Apparently, waiter is a demeaning. I found this out, a few months before we all got shut down and stuff like that. I found out that you're not supposed to call servers waiters anymore. But when you guys said you had it fleshed out that Splinter was going to die by around issue 30 or 40, you said?
Yeah, in the 40s, I think. I'm not positive, but yeah, I'd say around then.
Because that's a pretty good chunk of time. And you said it after that 2-year mark, IDW was like, all right, man, they got it. We don't need to, we know it's in good hands. We know they're not going to, hurt us here. Would there been a second character that you guys might have felt had just as big impact if you weren't allowed to, kill Splinter?
Short of one of the four turtles, no, I don't think so. Maybe if it played the right way, April or Casey. But as dear as those two characters are to the turtles, they're not family. They're not direct family. In our world, they shared history going back to feudal Japan when they were, literally a blood plant family. So it's hard to imagine anyone quite having the impact of Splinter. So no, I don't think so. I think definitely we could have got some heartstrings pulled with another character, but not to the same extent.
Because the way it was always set up, because and it's not 100%. My like I said, my brain doesn't really work from math, so it's not like 100%. If you follow A, B, you're gonna get C for this logic of thinking. But whenever I thought, it just caught me off. I never thought Splinter would go. I never really thought a turtle would go. I figured Shredder, would, and he did. But I always felt like, even though she wasn't on every single page, it always felt like April would have been the one that got the axe vice Splinter. Had that ever come up at all, or is she like a sacred character type of thing?
I think everyone is. I don't think there's any characters that are, completely safe and we would never harm. I think it was just a matter of, once we knew Splinter was going to take over the Foot Clan, that's the track we started going down. And April just doesn't have that connection with, say, the Foot Clan or the larger mythology. So she wasn't a natural focus for us in the issues 50 through 100. So it would be harder to develop that key moment. It is definitely, we could have had a completely different story and done something similar but different, no doubt. But that's not where the story took us.
Okay.
And that's what's the most fun thing about it. I talked about, we have these kind of large, overarching year plans, but they're very, they're blueprints, and a lot of details are out, are not developed, and sometimes in the course of an issue, we'll come across a new character that we're really enjoying, and that will change the whole direction of what goes on, and maybe we'll end up at that end point we planned, but be through a different way, and that's the most fun is just kind of seeing where the story takes us as we go, and I think it would be a lot less fun if we had this master plan where every issue was planned out perfectly and that'd get kind of boring for us,
Yeah.
I think, and I think it probably would translate to the reader as well too. So it's nice. It's great to have a general, a general plan, but being able to take detours and have fun with it at the same time is kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay, now I'm not asking you for spoilers here, but has in your so like for me, if I were to work with any chef possible, I'd always want to work with Emerald because that was my introduction to cooking, right? That was my guy. Has there been any writer or artist, if you had complete control where you can be like, hey man, you can come work with me. We don't have to worry about contracts or anything like that from any of these other companies you work for. If you could say, hey, I would love to have this writer or this artist or even this creative team, barring Tom, Kevin, Peter, and Sophie, who do you think you would pick?
Yeah,
Or
that's really difficult. Definitely changes. Would change from time to time. The first name that's coming to my mind is Rick Remender. I'm a huge fan of his, and he worked on Turtles briefly for Mirage back in the day. Kind of later era Mirage, I think in the aughts. So he already has some familiarity, and at least I don't know the guy, but one assumes he had interested in Turtles at one point. So that'd be definitely really cool. He's made it clear that I think on social media that he doesn't have any interest in working on things other than his own
yeah,
books, his own creator-owned books, which I totally respect. But if we're talking kind of dream creators, that'd be great. I'm a big fan of Jeff Lemire.
oh,
That'd be cool.
fantastic.
And then that's just sort of what I consider standard action Turtles. But if you open that up to kind of more slice of life stories, geez, it opens up tremendously. I couldn't even start with that. But I've always felt like I've had one foot. When I grew up reading comics, I had one foot in superheroes and one foot in the indie world.
Mm-hmm.
And Turtles are kind of the perfect straddling of that. But my point being is I would want to get some more weird independent indie creators that maybe don't have an established fandom. And we've been able to do that to an extent in some of the side series. But I would definitely, I love doing that. I love working with people who maybe aren't as well known, people who are coming into their own. That's always, it's just exciting to work with exciting new people. So, the list is endless. I would love, there's endless people. I'd love to see Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba do some Turtle stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. There's going on and on.
I mean, Jeff Lemire, he would be I first comic of his, like I said, I got back in at around 2011. Was that Animal Man run? Just a fantastic book, and that was like my introduction. And I started following. That's when I learned to like, oh man, I'm just gonna follow these writers. I don't care what book it is. I never read really Animal Man before. I'd seen him on some stuff, but I was like, it was a little too weird for me at the time. And then I see what he does with this obscure character, and I mean, I think it would be a perfect fit. And he's not an indie guy, but man, I think Mark Waid with what he did with Justice League and a few of the things that he's done as far as team books go, I think he could really nail a pretty solid turtle series or a turtle arc.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone who's any of those guys, Kurt Busiek, any of those kind of what I call veteran, those guys all know what they're doing very well, and absolutely, yeah, they put out some great books.
And if I just had the money, man, I'm hiring George Perez, just fantastic artist. But I got off track. I apologize there. Real quick, 1 second of pop culture, whether it be TV shows, movies, books, what have you. Is there a hero that you think that could go along? We've seen Batman, so we've seen the Ghostbusters, we've seen Power Rangers. Is there a superhero or a superhero team that you think would, kind of fit with the Turtles?
We're just doing the rapid fire. I'm just going to say the things that immediately came to mind. These aren't my, if I had time to think about it, these wouldn't be my final answers. But I saw the new Bill and Ted movie, so I would love to see the Turtles with Bill and Ted on a time travel adventure. And when you said villain, the first name that came in my mind was Doctor Doom. So let's have Bill and Ted with the Turtles on versus Doctor Doom and a time crisis type thing. That's the story.
Doc Brown is the evil villain behind it. He's the Oz.
That's the real Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Faceplate, and it's Doctor Doom.
Now,
yeah, that's great. It writes itself.
when you were doing what you do for any of the books, keeping everybody on par, or keeping the story flowing and making sense, are you like a quiet guy, or are you somebody that has to have something on as background noise?
I'm usually a quiet guy when it comes to writing and doing something creative. I'm very much a background guy, noise guy when I'm doing some kind of mindless, like a spreadsheet or just, changing file names or who knows what. If it's mindless, I love to, rock out with something. But I do find it a little distracting when I'm actually trying to think new thoughts.
Okay. And is there anything that you've read in the past or recently that maybe not everybody knows about, but you really want people to know about? You want to get it out there. You got to get this book, this writer, he's the next guy, or this is fantastic. Just check this out.
Yeah, it's not going to be really anything, that's directly connected to the Turtles at all. There's this, it's now a large graphic novel collection, but there's a series called Berlin by a writer-artist named Jason Lutz, which is about kind of Germany in the 1930s, in the 20s and 30s. And it's really just a look at these artists living in Germany at that time during the Weimar Republic, and their stories kind of intersect, and they're going about their lives. But in the background, there's this fight between the Nazis and the communists. They're kind of vying for power in Germany at the time. It's just really fascinating. It's historically, I'm really into history, so I was really into that. The characters are fascinating. The artwork is wonderful. So if you're looking for something with a little bit more of a historical bent, more of a serious read, that's kind of the best book I've read. It's a few years old now. It's been going on for a long time, but it wrapped up a little while back. But I just finally got through it earlier this year, so that's the top of my list currently.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. I'm gonna write that one down. Is there any book, like if you say, hey man, I'm gonna hang up the Turtles, you're gonna do your swan song, you're gonna take your bow, like Tom did. Is there any franchise that you would love, or a series that you would just love to write? Whether it be in anything that's not, IDW, DC, Marvel, Image. Is there anything out that you would just mean, man, I would love to have my hands on this one?
Not really. I've worked on Star Wars, and I've worked on, we do these all ages books with Marvel, so I've worked on Avengers. I've worked on Transformers. I've worked on Godzilla. There's just a lot of my favorite things I've actually kind of worked on. I'm sure the second I get off the phone, I'm going to think of something and be like, oh, yes, of course, this.
That's just what part 2's for.
Yeah. I'm a huge David Lynch fan. And so, if we could do, some sort of Twin Peaks comics, that would probably be it. But I would be terrified to work on that just because it's, I love it so much. And it's such a unique vision that I would feel very scared about messing it up. For the sake of an answer, I'd say, Twin Peaks would be something else, yeah.
All right, and last two questions. So you had to choose one, so it's either the 2012 series that was on Nickelodeon that you liked better, or was it the original one you came up on in 87, 88?
I think there's no doubt that the 2012 series is a better show.
Oh.
No disrespect to anyone who worked with the original. The original, obviously, is wonderful and responsible for so much in Turtles today, but just in terms of the quality of the stories, and the animation and the voice acting, actually the voice acting was pretty phenomenal in the original cartoon, so I won't say anything against that. But I think just I would say the 2012 series. It was more entertaining. I could watch that right now whereas I feel like I would maybe struggle. I get some novelty, nostalgia value out of the original cartoon, but I don't think I could probably watch more than a few episodes in a row without wanting a break. So I'll go with the 2012.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a consistent emotional roller coaster than that first one. And the last question, if you had to pick a story arc that you've worked on in the Ninja Turtles from 1 to 108, what has been, what has been the one that you would hang up on the refrigerator? What's been the one that stands out the most? Like, damn, we did it on this one.
I would say issue 50, and the storyline leading up to that was the in quotes the death of Donatello. I think specifically number 50. I think that we really set ourselves up for a big story, and I don't feel egotistical saying that. I think we did pretty well with it. I think we set out what we achieved for. Where issue 100, I think it had an emotional effect on you, and I think we did a great job with it and really achieved a lot of what we wanted to. But I don't think there's any sour notes in number 50. Whereas number 100, maybe it's just working behind it. I know there were things we weren't able to quite fit in and things that just kind of changed a little bit. But issue 50, I think, is really if I had to take one single Turtles comic that I've worked on, it would probably be Turtles 50 as my favorite.
All right, my friend, it's been a real pleasure. Is there anything that you would like to, put out there, give everybody a plug for, anything that you really want people to know?
Keep reading Turtles. On my personal end, I had a book come out called Ghost Tree last year that I wrote. Very, very different from the Turtles. But if you're looking for anything from me, that's my most recent personal work. But yeah, check out what we're doing at IDW. I also edited the Usagi Yojimbo series, which has connections to Turtles. That remains one of my favorite books of all time. We got some really cool creator-owned series coming out. So yeah, keep reading Turtles though. That's why people are listening to you right now, and we got really exciting stuff coming up.
I mean, we couldn't say it better. Keep reading Turtles, guys. Thank you